The Flintstones was a sitcom that ran on ABC from 1960 to 1966, making history as the first animated show to air in primetime. While the show has been off the air for decades, the Flintstones are still a regular fixture in many of our lives thanks to the continued success of a certain brand of breakfast cereals. In fact, it's possible some people only know them as grocery store mascots and have no idea the show ever existed. So today, we're digging up how Fruity Pebbles kept the Flintstones from becoming fossils. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History Food channel. After that, please leave a comment and let us know what other memorable brands you would like to hear about next. Okay, let's yabba dabba do this! The Flintstones was a domestic sitcom set in a prehistoric version of suburbia that followed Fred and Wilma Flintstone and their neighbors Barney and Betty Rubble. Initially conceived as an animated version of The Honeymooners, Fred's coarse attitude and competitive nature were borrowed from Ralph Cramden, which led to frequent dust-ups with Wilma and Barney that were all resolved by the end of each episode. Hey, we said it was a sitcom. They lived in the town of Bedrock, which was mostly built from stone and powered by talking dinosaurs. As we said, the series went off the air in 1966, but thanks to its groundbreaking popularity, it didn't exactly go away. Via frequent appearances and syndicated reruns, TV specials, and educational films, the Flintstones remained a dominant presence on television and in pop culture for years afterward. Meanwhile, breakfast cereal manufacturer Post was having trouble building market share for a product called Sugar Rice Crinkles. To remedy the situation, an executive named Larry Weiss decided to license the Flintstone characters from production company Hanna-Barbera and rebrand the cereal with their likenesses. That doesn't really sound like a big deal these days because supermarket shelves are now lined with breakfast cereals based on popular fictional characters. And even way back in the 60s, using animated characters as spokespeople for cereal products was nothing new. But what would come to be known as the Pebbles cereal line was the first cereal brand specifically designed as a tie-in to an existing intellectual property. Ironically, given Pebbles cereal is still on the shelves over 50 years later, Post execs weren't enthusiastic about Weiss's idea. They assumed the idea of a character cereal would be a fad, and they figured that fad had about a year before it ran out of steam. But for whatever reason, they gave it a shot anyway. So, in 1969, what was then just called Pebbles, in honor of Fred and Wilma's daughter, was introduced on the west coast of the United States. The fruit-flavored cereal, which retained its rice crinkle shape, quickly became so popular, Post decided to distribute it nationally the following year. In fact, they immediately got to work on a second variety. In anticipation of that release, they renamed the original cereal Fruity Pebbles. After two varieties of the cereal showed up on the shelves of supermarkets across America in 1970, Pebbles quickly became one of Post's best-selling cereals and has remained so to this day. Those two varieties were fruit and chocolate, originally meant to be called Flint Chips and Rubblestones. But at the last minute, one of Post's top advertising associates suggested Fruity Pebbles and Cocoa Pebbles, presumably because they're much easier for consumers to understand. Unlike their more colorful counterpart, the formula for Cocoa Pebbles has remained largely unchanged over the past half-century. The formula for Fruity Pebbles, on the other hand, has been tweaked a few times. Originally, they just came in three colors: yellow, red, and orange, ostensibly representing lemon, tangerine, and orange flavors. However, in 1980, a fourth color, purple, was added, and in 1984, they added green pebbles into the mix. So-called berry blue joined the fold in 1994, a new incredibly purple was thrown in a year later, and in 2005 they added bedrock berry pink. Discerning consumers have also noticed from photographs that the colors have become conspicuously brighter over the years. Hey, it's an old cereal. Don't blame it for going heavy on the dye. Changes aside, for the first 20 years of their existence, Fruity and Cocoa remain the only two kinds of Pebbles. But in 1990, Post introduced Dino Pebbles. Named for Fred and Wilma's pet dinosaur, Dino Pebbles were vanilla-flavored crinkles with mini marshmallow pieces thrown in. And Dino himself appeared in the commercials. Nonetheless, the line was canceled just 1 year later. Today, in addition to the standard Fruity and Cocoa varieties, there's also Marshmallow Fruity Pebbles and Marshmallow Cocoa Pebbles. For some reason, the marshmallows and Marshmallow Fruity Pebbles are ocean-themed, with shapes like turtles, starfish, giant clams, jellyfish, shark teeth, and sharkosauruses. Meanwhile, the marshmallows and the cocoa ones are just round. Maybe those are fish eggs? You can also buy limited editions of the cereal, including Magic Fruity Pebbles and Berry Fruity Pebbles. Pebbles has been cashing in on the limited editions ever since 1997, when they released Christmas-themed Holiday Fruity Pebbles, which were just like regular Fruity Pebbles, but exclusively red and green. Other limited lines have included Bedrock Blizzard, Winter Fruity Pebbles, Ice Berry Pebbles, Bam Bam Berry Pebbles, Dino S'mores Pebbles, Sugar Cookies Pebbles, Cinnacrunch Pebbles, Marshmallow Mania Pebbles, Cupcake Pebbles, Ice Cream Pebbles, Peanut Butter and Cocoa Pebbles, and a whole bunch more. Barney has his work cut out for him. On the Flintstones cartoon show and its many adaptations, Fred and Barney are bosom buddies whose friendship is regularly tested by Fred's schemes. Despite freely sharing his pebbles with Barney in the earliest commercials, starting around 1978, Fred began acting more like himself and refused to share any of it with his neighbor. In retaliation, Barney engaged in a host of criminal schemes to steal Fred's pebbles. Barney's heists usually involved him distracting Fred while he pilfered the cereal or dressing up in disguise to trick his best buddy into unwittingly sharing with him. Eventually, Fred would catch on to the scam, get angry over seeing his breakfast stolen, and exclaim,
"Barney, my pebbles!"
Barney, realizing the jig was up at that point, would make a quick quip and run away, while Fred would spit out a specially tailored version of his most iconic catchphrase.
Yabba dabba delicious!
The commercials never made it clear why Fred refused to share with Barney, but worth noting is that special Christmas installments of the campaign would usually have Fred giving Barney some of his pebbles in the Yuletide spirit. It was fairly similar to campaigns for other cereals like Trix and Lucky Charms, which feature children refusing to share with a desperate rabbit and a starving leprechaun. Cereal advertisers during this time were obsessed with denying mascots their breakfasts. Around 2009, those commercials gave way to a whole new campaign that more heavily featured the younger characters of Pebbles and Bam Bam. And that's when things got a bit rocky for the brand. That same year, Cocoa Pebbles released a commercial depicting Fred and Barney in a wrestling match against a wrestler named Hulk Boulder, who was clearly modeled on the WWE Hulk Hogan. In the ad, Boulder quickly defeats his opponents, but before he can enjoy his victory, Barney's son Bam Bam climbs in the ring and demolishes him. It seems harmless enough, but the real Hulk Hogan wasn't amused. He felt the commercial wasn't great for his image, particularly because for a time, Hogan actually wrestled under the name Hulk Boulder. Long story short, Hogan promptly sued Post, who settled the lawsuit and agreed to take the commercial off the air. It's difficult to quantify how much the survival of the Flintstones franchise currently owes to the Pebbles cereal line. But as we mentioned earlier, it's worth noting that the show ended way back in 1966, roughly 60 years ago. Since then, there have been more than a few short-lived television spin-offs, including, but not limited to, The Pebbles and Bam Bam Show, The Flintstone Comedy Hour, The New Fred and Barney Show, The Flintstone Comedy Show, The Flintstone Kids, Cave Kids, The Rubbles, and Yabba Dabba Dinosaurs. There have also been a whole slew of TV specials and TV movies, like The Flintstones on Ice, A Flintstone Christmas, The Flintstones Meet Rockula and Frankenstone, The Jetsons Meet the Flintstones, and A Flintstones Christmas Carol. There were even 2 live-action theatrical films, including 1994's The Flintstones and its 2000 sequel, The Flintstones in Viva Rock Vegas, in which Fred is presumably killed by a boar. But with the exception of the Pebbles and Bam Bam spin-off Yabba Dabba Dinosaurs, which ran from 2021 to 2022, pretty much all of those TV spin-offs and specials predate the 1990s. And while there was a direct-to-DVD animated film in 2015 called The Flintstones in WWE Stone Age SmackDown, at this point, even the 2 theatrical movies are both over a quarter-century old. There have been a handful of attempts to reboot the series, including one from Family Guy impresario Seth MacFarlane. And as recently as 2024, Fox passed on a Flintstones reboot from actress and Cocaine Bear director Elizabeth Banks. Bedrock, an animated show focusing on a retirement-age Fred and a 20-something Pebbles trying to make their way in a world that is transitioning into the Bronze Age. That actually doesn't sound bad. In much the same way that there are now generations which only know boxer George Foreman as a guy who sells grills, and NFL coach John Madden as a video game mascot, it's entirely possible there are 20-somethings watching this video who only know the Flintstones as cereal brand mascots no different from Tony the Tiger or the Trix Rabbit. So while it's impossible to say how much Fred and Barney owed to the cereal they've been fighting over for much longer than they were ever on the air, since 1970, the most consistent and long-running place to see the Flintstones in action has been in commercials for Fruity and Cocoa Pebbles. Without those spots, the family and its world would have, at best, had a much more sparse presence in pop culture closer to the Jetsons, the Flintstones' futuristic spin-off. And when was the last time you heard about a Jetsons reboot? Maybe they should have made a cereal. So what do you think? Have you heard of the Flintstones before your first bowl of Fruity Pebbles? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other Weird History Food videos.